Hello there, Na'aleh. We begin Parshat Nasso, Mirz Hashem. We also would like to thank our great technician here in the studio, Mrs. Libby Bamser. Our shir is Lila Nishus Rachaleh Bas Chaim Si Aleh Shalom. I told you for quite a number of times, maybe too many times already, that we've had quite a great difficulty because our mandate is to tell the story of the Parsha. And Parsha after Parsha, there was no storyline. It was just mitzvahs, it was concepts. Baruch Hashem, we come back to a story. So we're going to give an overview and a beginning and an introduction and maybe a little too much of this, but here's the concept. Something I've spoken about very often, which is how a small thing can be very significant. One can never underestimate the power of something small, because something small can become truly great. We'll see this in our Parsha, based on a very interesting concept said by Rabbi Lev. The rabbi said the following statement: God never words greatness to an individual until he first tests him on the small matter, on the pitch of his, if you will. And it's the small things that truly make something great. The motto of Boy Scouts is do a good turn daily. How a small thing, that makes you into a more ethical and a moral person. Not that we have to bring a proof from the Boy Scouts. We have this in the Torah itself. How did Moshe Rabbeinu become the leader of our people? I assume you're all familiar with the Medrash, which teaches that he was a shepherd, and one day he was chagrined because a sheep was missing. He found the sheep far away at the brook drinking water, and he felt so chagrined. Here he was, supposed to be the shepherd for the flock, and one sheep had strayed off because it was thirsty. He had not tended properly to the sheep. He put the shepherd on his shoulder and carried him back. That was a loving shepherd. God said, I want this man to be the shepherd of my flock, to be the leader of the Jewish nation. That's what it says in the Medrash. But Chazal say, this is of course based on what it says in the Torah, one day Moshe was walking in the wilderness. He sees a bush which is burning, yet it's not consumed. Asur and I shall go out of my way to see this godly sight. How much do you go out of his way to see the godly sight? Polemic in the Talmud. Rav Yochanan says he went 3 steps out of his way. Just 3 little steps. Says Reish Lakish, he turned his neck. It was the smallest of acts. But because he went out of his way to show something godly, that depicts greatness. I hasten to mention, you tell your husband, there's a bush which is burning, but it's not consumed. Okay, honey, but I got to go to work. You call the fire department. I got to run. Out of your way for something small, for something great. That depicts greatness. For that, Moshe became the leader of our people. Likewise, Batya, the daughter of Pharaoh, she went out to the water to bathe. And she sees the baby far away in the water. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. She stretches out her hand. Now, wasn't that a silly thing to do? The baby was so far away, and the Chazal teach her hand elongated and outstretched, and she managed to pull him in. How one small thing can be so great. That's a great lesson, how something small can be significant. Why is it that God created flowers? Said Rabbi Victor Miller, to make people smile and chuckle. And it's not little us, it's small, it's big, little us. We can be something godlike. You get someone to smile, to grin, be happy. That small deed is very significant. I don't know about you, but in our home, certainly before Shabbos, there's always a great rush, and the decibel levels get a little bit higher. And now I must tell you, I've traveled a lot, and I've been over people's homes where Friday afternoon the carpet is vacuumed, they're sitting out the poolside, dropping grapes in their mouths, sipping an iced tea with a lemon over it, and everything is relaxed. In many homes it's not that way. I can relate better to homes where it is not that way. And yet, no matter what rush you are in, if you can have the table set before the guests arrive, Kishulchan Aruch, that's what God did for us. For Adam and Chava, for Adam and Eve were invited into the world, God set the table. Trees and grass and clouds and water, He prepared for them. So this smallest act, I'm waiting for you, I crave your arrival, I care about my guests. That small act is very significant. That's doing something godlike. And I think on other occasions we mentioned how this was the idea of Slobodka. Slobodka taught how small things can be significant. The motto of Slobodka was Gadlut Adam. You are so significant, so grand, so chivalrous. How could you do something inappropriate if you knew what you were? And therefore, anything small cannot be significant. Every small thing can be very significant. Rabbi Salanter, indeed all the Musar personalities, it seems to be a dominant theme how they recognize how small acts be significant. Perhaps the most famous statement Rabbi Salanter ever made was, one evening he was passing by a cobbler. I do not know the verb, but he was cobbling, he was shoemaking. And he went over to the cobbler, he went to the shop, and how can you be working? There's no illumination. And the cobbler pointed to the candle and he said, ironically, of course, every Israeli school child knows this by heart, I suspect the comment did not say it in Hebrew. Kol zman she'ner dolek efshar od letaken. As long as the candle's still burning, it's still possible to rectify and repair. In other words, as long as the neshama is still kicking, as long as you're still alive, every act can be significant. Every act can be significant. Okay, that was merely an introduction. Okay, so we have in our Parsha, this I heard, it's based on a sparno in the beginning of the Parsha that was so beautifully elaborated by Rabbi Lev in Tafshin Mem Zayin, meaning 22 years ago. And the concept is the following. The Parsha begins, and then we'll go see things inside. It begins, it's the longest Parsha, Parshat Nasso. I'll get you later on in our class how many psukim there are and why it's so long. It begins by saying, Nasso es rosh b'nei Gershon gam heim. So